We alive right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
At least pride-wise, made me feel good because you don't ever want to get swept.
And I've never done this. I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
If you ask me, can the Bucks win Game 5? I'd put it at
100%
confidence. Yes.
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
At this point, we don't know what's going to happen. You can get Game 6. You can steal it.
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
Winning Game 6 and 7?
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
I don't think they're going to win the whole series, but
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
Hello and welcome to episode 201 of Dear Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented to you by us, the staff at Brewhoop. I am Kyle Carr. I am one of your usual hosts, and I feel like for this episode, we have to get the OG crew in, so I have Adam. How's it going?
I'm doing really well, Kyle. It's been not a great month for the Bucks, but a great month for me, so that's all that really matters.
Yeah, when you're like, it's a great, I was like, for who?
Exclusively me, yes.
That's fair. And then we got Riley. Riley, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Kyle. Adam, I'm happy to hear that it's been going well for you. It's been also a great month for Dear Diaries. One more thank you to Gil Klappa for making the time to join us. It was an excellent podcast and unfortunately timed because about 48 hours later, we found out that the season's pretty much over. But we'll get into that on this podcast, but I'm doing good otherwise.
Yeah, it was, we were on the high. We had interviewed him. That was Monday. Everything's okay. We find out Dame's not playing. That's not too bad. We can manage. It's okay. He's out with a calf injury. Out indefinitely. Okay, sure. It can't get worse. And then we find out, oh no, Dame's just got a blood clot in his calf. He has DVT. He's out indefinitely. No one knows when he's coming back. Not great. Then the Bucks lose on a last-second shot to the Phoenix Suns. Mike Budenholzer gets his revenge. Okay, not great. Then they continue the road trip, face the Denver Nuggets, which was already going to be a tough ask. And then we find out Giannis isn't playing as well. So, all right, we're going to get boat raced out of the building. Team actually kept it competitive. They lost 127-117, but it was a competitive game throughout 3 quarters. So, okay. Maybe not great that they lost, but at least there's a moral victory. Come back home after a long road trip. You face the New York Knicks, who don't have Jalen Brunson, get played out the building, lose 116-107. And then it just got worse. And last night, Sunday night, they faced the Atlanta Hawks at home and lose 145-124. Yes, Milwaukee scored 124 points and still lost by 21. And it was worse than that. The score is still being generous. Allowing 82 points and a half is not great. So, I don't know if we want to say what we learned from this past week, or do we just want to jump into, I think the season's cooked.
Let's start here. Is the 6th seed where this team ends up? Gut check, we only have I think it's about 9 games left. Is 6th seed kind of where we're feeling we're going to be at?
There's 8 games left.
Okay, 2 are against the Pistons, right?
Let me get it pulled up because I had the full
schedule.
schedule.
They are. Okay.
So, and we'll get part of it to the predictions. But yes, they got the Suns again, Sixers, Heat, Pelicans, Timberwolves, Pelicans again to make up for the one that got canceled, and then Detroit twice to end the season. So not a tough schedule. That is the positive. Sixers are bad.
And, yeah. Zion.
Pelicans are
Williamson.
shutting down Zion and McCollum.
Yep.
So you would think 3 wins there should help. And Milwaukee is currently, I think, 3.5 games. I think they're 3 games back they're 3.5 games back of the 4 seed. They're only a game and a half back of the 5th seed. So I'm still putting them in 6.
They could get to 5. I'm looking at the Pistons schedule here. So the Pistons have the Thunder, the Raptors, so they should win that one. The Grizzlies, the Kings, the Knicks, and then the Bucks twice. So I'd say they have a harder schedule left than the Bucks. And the Bucks could make up ground with those last 2. So the Bucks could get to 5. I mean, obviously this Atlanta game is unbelievably dispiriting, right? But the Bucks are facing teams that will be actively trying to lose, which I would say is a little bit different maybe than the Pistons. So there could be some hope.
I'll also add there is the chance for the 4 seed still. Like I said, they're only 3.5 games back. And the Pacers have Charlotte, who you would expect them to win that one. Utah, you would expect them to win that one. But then they go to Denver, come back home, face the Wizards. You would expect they win that one. Face Cleveland twice and the Magic. So also a tougher schedule than Milwaukee.
That's assuming Cleveland hasn't just like stopped playing at that point, right? I mean,
True.
they'll have it pretty much. It's so I ask only because a lot of this discussion will follow on here will be around the state of the franchise, because I think regardless of whether out they're the 4, 5, or 6 seed, things do not look promising. Just presuming that Dame is going to be unavailable, it would be very strange if he was back. So if we're out Dame, the way they've played the past couple of weeks, some of the odd lineup choices, all sorts of things you could question and talk about. I just wanted to get a vibe. Like, does it matter at all where they end up? And when you talk about like, oh, well, the Pistons have a harder schedule. Well, the Pistons might just be a better team. So maybe they'll be able to overcome. I know statistics, like you look at the strength of schedule and it kind of breaks down, but just the way they're playing feels like a 6 seed. It's very, very strange we come. And it's primarily because you don't have Damian Lillard. But even before that, it was kind of touch and go there for a little while. So I was just curious if we're feeling strong on 6 seed. I prefer the 6 seed. Like, now I had preferred it to be like, oh, we'll hit our stride and we might as well just face the Knicks and go the hardest route possible. I didn't think we'd get the 6 seed because we'd suck. So that was a part of my logic when I was thinking about it. But I'm okay with being the 6 seed. It's fine by me, I guess.
I mean, for me, it's just more, regardless of 4, 5, or 6, at best, you're getting to the second round and getting gentlemen swept. Like, that's best case scenario, regardless of if you're the 4 seed, the 5 seed, or the 6 seed, is getting gentlemen swept in the second round. That's best case scenario.
So that was going to be my follow-up question. Given the state of the situation, no Dame, is the goal now just survive the first round? Like, any first round victory, no matter the opponent, we say, hey, not a season success, but a success given where the team is at. Is that our maximum expectations?
I don't even think I have expectations for this team anymore, to be honest.
I also don't have high or honestly almost any expectations, but I think if they were to get past the first round, I think that would be really successful. I mean, they haven't gotten past the first round in 2 years?
Yep.
So, and I'd like to see Giannis healthy, and it's a shame that it might be in this state, but I think if they got past the first round, that would be about the most I could hope for the rest of the season. So yes, I would call that a success at this point, Riley.
And then my final question, are you nervous about success? Does success even if it's a first round series, does it make people question, oh, maybe they got a little something? Maybe.
I hope not.
I mean, Giannis has the potential to have an excellent series, and I think there's still enough there, especially if they were to face off against either the Pacers or the Pistons, that they could make a series of it. And because they have Giannis, they could win that series. A little less clear with the Knicks, though they're kind of banged up, so who knows. But I wonder about this. We're going to have this weird confluence of long-term vision versus short-term actions. And of course, you root for the team no matter what. Like, I don't go into a playoff series, man, I sure hope they just lose so that we can cut the cord. I would like them to win, because you always want your team to win playoff games. But I wonder about that too. Do people get like all of a sudden another false impression of, well, it sucks that we still haven't seen Dame and Giannis together in the playoffs, but maybe third time's the charm and they'll get there. And we've seen enough from other guys that there's something there. So any concerns about playoff success weighing against, or do you think people will be clear-sighted enough to say, we've learned enough about the team, regardless of how the playoffs goes, that we know what we got to do going forward?
I think it's more of that. I think at this point, we've all seen, there's enough now. There's almost 2 seasons of proof of, okay, this is the ceiling of this team. This is what it is. Like, yes, having a healthy Dame and Giannis maybe slightly raises it, but I think we've seen this is not a team that is at that top 3, and it is not, and they're not close to it. And I think even if they were to win the first round and then give a team a challenge in the second round, I think there's still enough people that are kind of like, okay, It's not like they're a player away. It feels as though it's like, okay, we still have other pieces. So I don't think they're going to like fall into that false sense of security.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think given John Horst was fine just like trading one of the players who led them to a championship. I don't think he's going to care that they win a first round series. My question is, well, so you mentioned, Kyle, you don't think they will think they're a player away. So I don't know, what are you both thinking, just given the state of the team right now, for what are you envisioning for what you would want the off season to look like? Is it major moves? Is it minor moves? Like what is your kind of hope for the next steps here as they try to find some way to salvage what's left of Giannis in Milwaukee?
I'll let Riley go first because I feel like mine is going to take more time.
Well, we might step on each other's toes a little bit. We'll see. So I'm still a little torn on the front office situation. John Horst has had a lot of good moves. John Horst has had some mediocre moves, and he has had some bad moves. We reached the point now where we're not clear on what were his moves. When is he being denied decision authority by the owners? I think once you get to that point, honestly, as an executive, you probably need to bow out. And he already tried to, and then the team said, no, you're stuck with us, which is not an ideal situation, but that's where we are. So I would consider finding a new GM, if only because apparently John Horst has lost the ability to sway the owners into decisions that he thinks are best for the team, which is how we got Doc Rivers in the first place, apparently, and how we maybe got Adrian Griffin at some point or another. So that would be my first step. I'm pretty much out on the Doc experiment. I don't believe in him or his ability to put together a scheme on either end of the floor that really works for the team. The offense has looked really bad all season. I talked about doing that article series a couple weeks ago, and it's just eye-opening. And you watch it even without, it's without Dame, of course, but even with Dame, it's like pulling teeth. It never made sense why it was so difficult. And the defense had improved to top 10, like borderline top 10, but we had that really horrible start of the season. And I continue to question some of the rotation decisions and the matchup decisions. The Hawks game was a perfect example. We double Trae Young. We have Taurean Prince, who is a forward, folks. He's a wing forward who's guarding Trae Young one-on-one. So we have to throw doubles at Trae Young, and the Hawks have zero issues whatsoever running right around that and ripping off 140 plus points on the Bucks. So I think in terms of major moves, I know there's going to be the pushback. They're not going to pay for three coaches. I mean, they have more money than God. The owners have more money than God. NBA franchises are valued at unbelievable amounts. You can get whatever. You can pay three coaches to F off and not be here. I think you got to move on from Doc. If you move on from Doc, given the course of the past two coaching hires, I think you have to consider swapping out the front office and kind of having a clean slate. And then from there, I don't know, man. The DVT thing with Dame, I would have been all aboard the trade Dame train this summer because I don't believe in the pairing really at this point. And unfortunately, that's the kind of condition. I mean, first and foremost, hope everything is good by him. Like, obviously bigger than basketball, that sort of thing. Like, if it's something that is major that sidelines him, that's super unfortunate. But now it's also got, from a practical point of view, questions about availability long-term. What does that mean for his career as a player heading forward? I mean, I think there's a lot of guys who have had this. I think Brandon Ingram is one example where they had it, were resolved it. He hasn't had any issues since. Hope that's the same situation for him. But that'll now be another question. If the Bucks were considering moving on from Dame this summer, if I was a team acquiring, maybe like, there's a chance this guy gets another clot somewhere, and that's just it for his career. So it's really hard to say. I am more than happy to blow a lot of it up, understanding that is probably unrealistic, hard to sell Giannis on, and there's not a lot in the tank to build around. Even if you were to trade Dame, you'd be getting pennies on the dollar relative to what you would expect out of him. So it's a bad situation. But I would start with the coach personally. Start with the coach, consider the GM, and go from there. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Do you want to put your 2 cents in, Adam, before I go?
No, you should just go.
I said basically tear it all down and start over at this point, because if the goal is to be a championship contender and win championships, then the current state of this franchise is not going to get to that level. If you want to be a playoff team, you can continue treading water in this direction. But if you're aiming for championships, that's what your goal is. The Bucks are not heading in that direction. And I'm going to kind of veer into a Formula One territory. There's a team, Williams Racing, one of the historic teams of Formula One. They used to win championships all the time in like the 80s and 90s. They've struggled the past 20, 25 years. They have they call it a team principal, which is like the guy that oversees everything. And his name is James Vowles. And he took the job in 2023. When they were asking him, like, okay, what is your goal for day one? He pretty much said, I got to figure out what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses. And then he had the following quote, which I'm going to read. It started with this. I told them, I don't care how 2023 goes. I don't care about how 2024 goes. And I kind of don't care about 2025. It sounds strange, but that's not what of interest to me. What I'm interested in is trying to see where we can go. And for 2023 and 2024, I don't care about it. Go ahead, break anything. Break everything and anything. We can finish last, because this is an opportunity that you will have in your lifetime. Break everything. You kind of have an open menu or free pass to do what you can. If you think there's something that could be done that can make the team better, let's talk about it. But we can't keep carrying on with the same way for what we've been doing for 20 years. We're going to go backwards as a result. If we continue treading in the same direction, we will. We still might go backwards in the decisions that we make and trying something new, but there is the possibility that even if we go backwards, that gives us a better chance of moving forward than just keeping the status quo. Now that's where it is with the Bucks. You can't continue the status quo. We can't keep trying to piecemeal small move after small move, bit player after bit player. The core doesn't work, and it starts at the top. And again, this is not me saying it's one person. It's not just Doc Rivers. It's not just John Horst. It's not just Giannis. It's everybody from ownership all the way down. And at this point, you've tried 3 coaches now. Budenholzer did get a title. Part of that was because Giannis was superhuman. Part of that is because he was going into Monty Williams, who is not a good coach, and he was able to ride on the talent. But Budenholzer made enough moves, but then it was clear he was not going to be the guy, so you got rid of him. Bring in Adrian Griffin. He was not the guy. Got rid of him. Bring in Doc Rivers. He is not the guy. And at some point, you can rotate all the coaches you want, but we've always also said the roster is flawed. It's old. It's not athletic. Your salary cap, and that goes to John Horst. So John Horst already wanted to leave. And if he had gotten his choice, we would have had Kenny Atkinson as a coach, but he didn't get that. So at this point, why keep John Horst there? It's just a lame duck. If he has to go, he has to go. If everyone on the roster, not named Giannis, has to be up for trade, has to be something. Yes, we don't have trade pick. We don't have draft picks. There'll still be draft picks. There's still pick swaps. There's still second rounders. John Horst has not had a good history of drafting anyway. So there's also that factor to consider. But I think everyone not named Giannis should be under consideration of being shipped out to rebuild, reload, restock, recalibrate, whatever. But if you want to win a championship, we have to do something different. And it has to be a drastic change. And it has to be a complete teardown, get it back to the studs and build it back from there. Because if the Bucks want to keep trying to piece together like they are, they're not going to win the title. It's just going to continue dragging in this mediocrity. And if that's the new goal, then that's fine. Then go ahead. But I don't think they want that to be their goal. I think they want to try and be contenders, or at the very least, be up there in the top 3 in the East. But they're not there. And you have, like I said, you might have to just scrap the whole thing. I don't want them to trade Giannis, but if Giannis says, I don't want to be around for this, trade me, fine. You recoup some draft picks and you recoup some players, and you just have to start over. Is it going to put the franchise in abyss? Maybe. But is it possible that they can find a way to turn it around in a sooner time frame than just treading water with Giannis for the next 2-3 years? And then when it's clear it's still not getting better, you're stuck here and it's like, now what do we do? I just don't see the point of the goal is to win a championship to continue trying to make these small minimal changes when it needs a complete teardown from top to bottom.
So there's a lot to unpack there. So I guess you got to it kind of at the end. I was going to ask if you're comfortable then trading Giannis. So I guess my question would be then, so you would be content with having a team that has traded Giannis and you're just totally starting over from the absolute beginning?
I don't want them to trade Giannis, but if they are going to say we are trying a whole new vision, and Giannis says, I don't want to be a part of that, I will not love it, but I would at least understand, because then you're telling us, hey, we're not going to be winning a title, and we have to make the changes to get back to that. I can at least there is a plan. There is a plan, and it requires a drastic change. I wouldn't love it, but I would eventually understand it. This isn't like when they traded Ray Allen. It was like, why are you doing this? It's not like other superstar players that have come to Milwaukee. Giannis has won the title. He's done everything you could possibly ask of him. I wouldn't love it, but if there is a plan, then I'd eventually be okay with it. It would suck, but I can at least try and buy into the idea.
I'm not trading Giannis over my dead body. If he wants to ask out, I'm calling his bluff and saying, sorry, brother, you got another 2 years on your contract. Suit up and ball out. We need you back out there. Even if he requested a trade, I would still call his bluff, because the situation long-term is so bleak. And Giannis is ironically reaching the phase where Chris kind of was. It's obviously very different because Giannis has a lot more applicability. He's one of the top players in the league, top players in the world. But based on the way he plays, based on his age, he's 30, based on, how much he makes, all that sort of stuff, I almost wonder at times if his market as a trade piece too, in a way that would be worthwhile for the Bucks. You would get enough pieces in terms of proven young guys, tons of picks, all that sort of stuff. The only team you would want to trade with is the Pelicans, so we could get all our picks back. So if we're going to be doing a hard reset, we can control our own destiny again. And so either we need to trade with either Giannis is going to become a Pelican or he's going to become a Trailblazer. Those are his two options if he asks out. And I would say, do you want one of those two, or do you want to give us that season, that in between season, to see if we clear the decks and can, like Kyle says, do something completely different? But I'm not trading him. Even if he asked out, I guess I would work to honor it, but I would not be working all that hard, because I just don't. I just wonder at all the teams that would obviously be interested in him, but that would make it worth our while and would make sense for their competitive timeline, unless they think they're going to get him on a discount, in which case we might as well just hold on to him and try to sell him on whatever we're able to build in that 2-year period. I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions, but that's kind of where I'm at. And
right.
Where are you at? Yeah, or go ahead.
It's obviously I wouldn't do that. It's like, oh, well, you just wanted to. That's not my job. I'm not the one that's going to need to come in and figure out how to restock. That's not my job. That is whoever they hire to do that job. I don't need to worry about this actual plan of it. I am not the one that's going to talk to these GMs and be like, hey, what do you want to do? If you can find a way to just tear it down and just have Giannis and okay, Giannis, look, give us a season. Here's our attempt. Here's the roster. Here's a new GM. Here's a new coach. Here's this roster. Give it a season. See where it's at. Because I think Giannis would at least be willing to see if it's at least on the goal towards, again, the goal of having a championship contender. If he can see the signs, if he can see it, then he's more willing to stay, as opposed to, okay, yeah, we're it's not like we're going to I'm not saying go Washington Wizards method and just completely give up and punt. I'm not saying it's not that. It sounds like that, but you still want to bring in competent players. If you're going to trade Dame, trade him for 50 cents on a dollar, but it's still a serviceable NBA player. Something like that.
Yeah, what if that's actually kind of an interesting idea, Kyle. Like, what if we went to the Wizards? What about that Chris Middleton guy and that AJ Johnson? That AJ Johnson seems like he has some promise. That might be, maybe we can structure something.
Go to the Kings and be like, hey, give us those 5 second-round picks, or whoever it was. We need those 5 second-round picks back.
Oh, the Suns.
Yeah.
Was it the Nets? He like ended up
No, it
with
was the
Nets.
Suns.
Yeah.
It was the Suns that did it. Like, hey, you don't like your situation. We don't like our situation. How about Ryan Dunn and a bunch of second-round picks?
We get Ryan. Don't worry, we get Ryan Dunn back. That'll be him and Ajax are going to be great for the spacing. I think it's hard because we've reached this precarious point as a fan base, right? Where we're far enough from the title now where it's pretty easy to be kind of disgruntled, and then we're at the point in our franchise's lifespan where we were, the full blown sun. We're doing as well as we can, and then we've kind of started to decay since then, and the team is struggling to provide us with much of anything that allows us to think, wow, I can't wait to watch this team every night, right? Like, you have Giannis, and I still think Giannis is worth the watch every night. And then you have an offense that can't seem to function to the highest ability despite having two of, the NBA's top 75 players who are ostensibly offensive superpowers unto themselves. So you don't have a good offense. You have a defense that I don't seem to understand structurally what they're always trying to do, and I'm not sure the players do either. And that's frustrating insofar as, at least with, heck, even maybe a little with Adrian. Like with Adrian Griffin, it was like, okay, I understand what you're trying to do. This is dumbass behavior, but I kind of understand what you're trying to do. With Bud, you could easily know what they're trying to do in the playoffs. Be like, how the hell did you not know you're supposed to make that switch? Like, scream at the TV, all of that kind of stuff. Now it's just like a sort of level of incompetence that's frustrating every night. Because the team's already done well, there's not really any level for us to be like, boy, it's exciting that we made it to the second round of the playoffs, right? Like, we expected to be a championship contender for years, and now we've just sort of continually had worse and worse and worse results over and over, to the point that we're beaten down. And we don't really have any young, exciting things to keep our attention every night, right? Like, Ajax was kind of exciting, and then turns out he can't even play anymore. AJ Green has been the closest we've had. That's depressing, right? Like, there's just so many things about this team that make it hard to be like, at this stage of our fandom, to be saying, okay, I can't wait to watch this team every night. And I think for me, that's what's just been so frustrating, is like, okay, I love watching Giannis. I loved watching Giannis this year a ton, seeing him offensively be able to knock down all these shots. Defensively, it's been really frustrating. But I feel like for me, that's just been like the root of my frustration. And that gets back to what Kyle is saying, is like, okay, well, at minimum, if we did do this sort of light teardown around Giannis, I mean, there would be some novelty to that. Like, it might get frustrating throughout the year, and maybe if we had a new coach, we would understand what they're trying to instill. But there's something novel to that maybe would tell us that we're going in the right direction, like he said. Because right now, it's just frustrating because we want to keep seeing the signs of the team going in the right direction. I would say the only high point of this season for me has been, I don't know, midway through. Riley, you were off the podcast for a while then, but it was like when Dame and Giannis were running side pick and rolls, and I was like, oh my God, they finally figured something out. This is actually an unstoppable play. Why are we not doing this and spamming this all the time? But since then, I just haven't really found anything where I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I'm touching whatever sort of third rail this team has been looking for to reach that point. So that's been kind of the root of my frustration. I don't know if I have a point to all that, but I do think that I can understand why people would want to do something dramatically different, especially after the results of this last 2 years, even with the injury unluckiness that we've had.
We went from a situation where Giannis adding to his game in the years leading up to the title and the year after the title felt like, when you're watching the whole unit, adding a supercharger to it. It's like, we're already a really, really good team. And then Giannis does something a little bit different. He hits a couple of mid-rangers. He does something on defense. You're like, oh, wow, okay. Like, not only are we a really good team, our superstar is flashing the potential, that we're going to be a multi-title team. And now we're at a situation where Giannis is still doing those things. He's hitting more mid-rangers than ever. He's not taking threes ever. He's missing free throws even more just to make it more challenging for himself because he wants to make it harder. He's missing even more free throws, but he's doing all these things that are really exciting to watch. And what we on the podcast and throughout the entire commentary have been saying, what does Giannis's next steps look like? And we've seen it's in stops and starts this year. And it's like, well, thank God, because otherwise we'd be horrible. I can't rely on any of these guys around him. Dame sort of, but I've never felt like there's much of a connection between what those two guys do on the floor. They're just kind of two walking, talking, scoring numbers, which is fine and everything, but that does not make a system. I don't watch the team and be like, oh, wow, our system around these guys is really awesome. No, it's not. It's really not. It's not fun to watch at all. I almost never enjoy watching unless they have like, I don't know, if they have like a crazy individual performance, of course, but it's been very rare over the past 2 years. I'm like, man, I'm really glad I tuned in and they really put on a show for me. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. And some of it is, it's just kind of like age for Dame, for example. I don't remember which podcast I was listening to, but they made a good point. Like, when Dame showed up here, did you guys think he was just going to have like more than a couple of games you can count on 1 to 2 hands of like, wow, he got really hot and just shot the other team out of the game completely? Because I think that's happened a couple times over 2 years, and that alone is just, I thought the price of admission was going to be he was just going to get hot and Giannis wouldn't have to do a lot because Dame would just hard carry everything without unreal shooting, and that just has never happened. So from the very beginning, the core pieces are not a great fit, and the team around them, it's I don't know, not that interesting. And we're getting to the point now too, on top of everything, where you're swapping in 1-year mercenary guys. There is no George Hill is here for 3 seasons and he's a perfect fit. There's no, oh, we just got Brook Lopez off the free agency market and now he's going to be here for like almost a decade. That's just not happening. Like Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince, I'm not saying they're dogging it on purpose, but if they just didn't want to give 100% because they have an eye out the door already, and if they hit a couple more threes that might earn them some more money in free agency this summer, that's just what you're forced with. So you can't even really build a core because you can't convince guys to stay here. You can't give them multi-year contracts. It's like, hey, Bobby, you want to stick around for a couple more years? That's where we're at. So it's, I think your point is correct, Adam, that there's just not a lot of joy in watching it. And unfortunately, even if you do the mini tear down, unless you really hit on all those moves, rebuilding a mini core around it is going to be extremely tough to do. But the main point is it's just not fun to watch. I don't think it's been fun to watch for 2 years. And if anybody has listened to the podcast for the past 2 years, they'll kind of pick that up. But I don't, knock anybody if they've enjoyed the Dame experience in some sense, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's been flashes. And I feel like this season was like, okay, we're getting more good Dame games. As like last year was very much like, yeah, it'd be good for one game and then it'd be like shaky for the next 3. But then this year it feels we got more of a consistent Dame, which was encouraging. But I think for me, it's also like there's no plan anymore. And the best way, and this is where it comes back to John Horst, where it's like, yeah, he's the one that made the trade for Drew and won the title. Great. He's also the one that has given all these contracts to Brooke, to Bobby, to Pat Connaughton. He is the one that has not done a good job at all drafting. If you look at John Horst's draft picks, the best one is probably Dante DiVincenzo. And then he traded him away for basically a sack of peanuts. So it's like, you're not even getting that. Like, he drafted DJ Wilson. That didn't work. He didn't even get a second contract. Dante, traded him for nothing. Jordan Nwora, not good. Marjan, bad. Chris Livingston, bad. Tyler Smith, I don't even know because we don't know. He's not playing. AJ Johnson already shipped out for Kyle Kuzma. That's part of the Chris Middleton trade. So even then, it's like, that's where it comes back to me for like, maybe you need a new GM and a new coach. because you might need someone. And again, you need a new set of eyes because someone can come in and see a Tyler Smith and be like, wait, I can actually work with this kid. I can do something with him, and gives him a chance, like Doc Rivers did with AJ Green. It's like, maybe there is something to it. And granted, AJ Green had an NBA skill already, while Tyler Smith, we don't know. But that comes down to, is that a problem with the scouting department and John Horst? Is that a problem with Doc Rivers? I don't know. But we have enough evidence from both Horst and Rivers where it's like, even if replacing those two and you keep that same core of players, but you have to do something because it's not working.
Okay, so let's say what if heads don't roll this summer? Okay, let's say we go into this summer. All right, we still have Doc. Because look, this is a very realistic scenario. Okay, I know the crappy level-headed guy. This is very realistic that we have Doc again at the start of next year. John Horst is still here. He's traded Kyle Kuzma because I no longer like him. Okay, just if anyone has been wondering, no, I don't like him anymore. Okay, he stinks. Get rid of him.
Let's set the record straight here, folks.
It's been a month. We at the time, Adam's claim was not far-fetched, but it has not gotten better.
That's so bad. Okay, he swings a trade to get some sort of viable third player. I don't know who that would be. Okay, don't make me think about that right now. We get someone at a quasi like Chris Middleton level. Okay, he fills in whatever other gaps. He gets this year's version of Gary Trent Jr. We still have AJ Green. I guess we still have Bobby. Okay, are you both just like totally out next year? You're like, this team. What would be okay? That happens. What would be your expectations for that team? That scenario.
At best, five seed. But oh my god, if that were to happen, it would be pulling teeth trying to watch this team.
I would expect them if they were healthy, which they have not been. So do not. Timeline tells us do not expect them to be healthy, but knock on wood, they are healthy at like a 3 or a 4 seed if everything really goes well. Probably a 4 seed is the ceiling. I'm really not super happy with the Doc Rivers experiment. Unfortunately, Kyle was right. Kyle's always been right, but Kyle was right from the very beginning. I just really think that's the hard cap on where the team goes now that we're a year and a half into it. So probably like a 4 seed would be my realistic expectation.
Okay, now let's say they bring in a new coach. John Horst is still GM, but he hasn't made any moves. You have Giannis, Dame, similar unit to this year with maybe some other new one-year peoples, but there's a new coach. Do you feel more optimistic about next year or the same?
I'd feel more optimistic. Okay, it depends on who the coach is. Like if they were to say, we're bringing in Nick Nurse, I'd be like, oh God. So we're just going from mid to mid. Okay. If they brought in a new coach, I would at least have more optimism.
Frank Vogel. They bring in Frank Vogel.
I'd be more optimistic because I think Frank Vogel has gotten dealt a bad hand his last 2 roles. I don't think he's like this upper echelon tier coach, but I would say he is an upgrade on Doc.
I'd be more optimistic simply because, and this is, I don't want this to turn into the Doc bashing hour, but it kind of is for me personally. It certainly could be. It's just not impressive. I don't know. Like, how can you not come up with systems? How can you have so much chaos, so little structure that's out there? So yeah, I would say, I mean, let's say, for example, hypothetical Taylor Jenkins. Now, do I necessarily want to have a former Bud assistant? I mean, he was very successful with Memphis. Apparently did not play the keep your superstars happy game all that well, but
good developer. I feel like young talent got better. Him.
Now we don't have young talent worth developing, but yeah, in theory, yes. I forgot about Tyler Smith. The idea of AJ Johnson. So yeah, let's say it's like Taylor Jenkins. Yeah, I would be a lot more I shouldn't get crazy. Not a lot more optimistic. I would be more optimistic that they could be like a 3rd seed and a really tough out, just because I still, in my heart of hearts, think there's enough talent around to build something. Now, injuries have been bad. The Dame situation, obviously, that's like that's like a rogue wave situation. You can't really predict that. It just happens. But assuming, again, health, I just think there's enough there. And critically, I don't get a sense that the Doc John Horst pairing in terms of finding fits talent wise that they both agree on is that great. So if you can find a guy that the GM trusts and can have input and they can work in lockstep to figure out the right roster moves, out that sort of stuff, I just feel like I'd be more optimistic. If all it was a coaching change, I think that would throw Joe Prunty out there for a couple games. Let's see what happens. It's not, he's used to that role. Let's see what he does leading the team into a playoff charge one last time. If it's Joe Prunty, I would not be more optimistic, but somebody outside the organization, I would be.
If Joe Prunty got to be interim while they have Dave Yeager, Darvin Ham, and who's the other former head coach on the staff? Is there another one? I can't remember. But that would be hilarious if Prunty moves all the way up.
Hey, he knows he's the man for the job. Do these other guys have a lot of interim experience? I don't think so. They don't know what it's like to lead men knowing that you are not going to keep this job after the season wraps. So, it's a little different for him than everybody else.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Vogel is there's more of a defensive plan there his offense. I think the offense would still be bad, but I think he at least has a better idea of what to do defensively with the players that he has. And I think that would be the biggest reason for optimism.
Yeah, I don't think
it's not like I'm thinking like Frank Vogel's there, top 3 seed. It'd be like, okay, at least there's something. There's a plan. There's an idea. They want to be more. And that was the thing with Adrian Griffin. It was like, oh, we're going to be like this aggressive defensive team. Okay. I'll work into it. I can at least give me a vision, give me a plan. Sure. It didn't work. It was actually the opposite. The defense was terrible, but the offense was entertaining. It's like, all right, at least this is fun. But again, give me a plan. Give me something to look forward to. If your goal is to be a championship contender, give me something that tells me you're trying to do something to get there.
Yeah, I don't think Doc has done a great job, but I think he's been fine. Like, I actually think he's been a little bit of tendency breaking from what I thought. I actually think he's pushed more for younger players than I thought he was going to be inclined to. So I think that's a feather in his cap, even if it came at the expense of my beloved pet Connaughton minutes. But I think the thing that's gotten me over the last probably, month or so is the meeting with Giannis and Dame after what was that, like game 65 or something of the season to talk about the offense. Like, if you have to meet with your 2 best players after game 65 to talk about the offense, like something's wrong. Like you totally screwed up. Clearly something, either your message is not getting through or something was wrong from the very beginning, because you shouldn't be at that point talking about how to rework an offense. And if that's the point they were at, they weren't going to be that good in the playoffs anyway. And I think we all knew that. But then you have, the Eric Name's article in The Athletic about, we're going to have to muck it up defensively without Dame, right? And like, I don't think giving up almost getting like a 150 piece on you by the Hawks is mucking it up very much. So there seems to be either something is not getting through between Doc and his players, or they're not coming up strategically with the processes that are going to be maximizing the pieces that they have. And in their defense, they got they didn't get that many new pieces. They got like 3 new pieces at the deadline, and they've tried to find ways to do it, but they haven't necessarily, I think, maybe found the best way to take advantage of those given the results so far. So, definitely disappointing. I would be interested in a new coach, but I can see how they could talk themselves into keeping him, because at the end of the day, this just sucks for us as fans that all we wanted to do is see our best players play in the playoffs, and we haven't been able to do that. And that nothing sucks more than that, because the playoff games are actually fun. And after you do the title, the regular season can only be so much fun. Like, you want the playoff feeling, and we just haven't had enough of that as Bucks fans. And that sucks.
Literally every year. So last year, Giannis is injured. This year, Dame is injured. Year before that, Giannis is injured. Year before that, Chris is injured. Like, come on. I'm just looking for one. Give me one good ride. And there is a certain level of when we get removed from this era, when we have a chance to just look back at it with like cold hearts, a little bit more of a colder eye to the situation, to say, how is the team going to be able to realistically overcome its star players? Chris in 2022, like still peak of his powers, Chris. And that was kind of like where the decline really started to begin. Giannis, obviously at his peak, missing twice now. Dame now missing. Like it's
1.5.
Yeah. Everything that from that part, that sucks. But ultimately, outside of, I think maybe the Giannis one is really the Giannis one last year. If you believe in, like, they were just running him really heavy minutes and heavy usage load. Outside of that, it's just kind of like bad luck. Like, it sucks, but ultimately that's kind of what it was that sunk them 3 seasons in a row, in which, depending on how this season goes or this playoffs goes, we miss Giannis's ages 28, 29, 30 seasons, and we don't even get out of the first round in any of those. Like, that's unbelievable. Really. If you had told me while we were recording that podcast at 2 a.m. after they won the title, we actually wouldn't get out of the first round for the next for 3 out of the next 4 seasons, I'd say, wow.
I would have been like, I probably would have been like, what happened? Like, who got hurt? Like, clearly we lost Giannis for the whole season. Like, it would have been like, oh, we lost Giannis for the whole season. Somehow this team scraped their way into like the play-in level.
Yeah, like, oh man, worst case scenario happened. Something like really tragic happened to Giannis. No, I mean, it was just like where a bad fall. Thanks a lot, Kevin Love, against the Heat, and where he broke his ass. He broke his ass, and then he like strained his leg working too hard, and it sucks, man. I don't know. It sucks.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, questions? It could be about this previous week. It could be about the team in general.
Here's one for you guys. Do we just need Bobby?
No.
Okay, all right. He's almost like a trade deadline acquisition, if you want to think about it that way. We missed him for 25 games. Hey, Bobby, stop taking bills.
Nothing would summarize the season more than Bobby coming back, being good for like 3 or 4 games, get to like game 2 or 3 of the playoffs, and completely crap the bed. Nothing would summarize the season best than that.
We're gonna play Bobby so many minutes. It's gonna make some people's heads spin how many minutes Bobby's about to play to end the season and then into the first round of the playoffs. He's gonna be getting heavy run, I have a feeling.
You know what I can say about him? At minimum, he looks like he has fun when he's out there playing, and that doesn't seem. Yeah. And so if nothing else, that could be helpful, because watching that Knicks game, and when I saw like Giannis out there, and no disrespect to the other players, but it was like Giannis and Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince and AJ Green, and I was just like, how the F is this team supposed to win against the Boston Celtics or the Cleveland Cavaliers or the New York Knicks, for God's sake, when you have like Mikal Bridges, Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby? It's like they're literally better at every single position than the Bucks. What, like 3 through 7 or whatever? I don't know. That was pretty dispiriting. So Bobby won't make a difference, but at least he has energy.
It's the kind of lineup that all the sickos on NBA 2K do, where it's like, oh, well, we'll just have Giannis and like all these crappy players, but then you'll trade for like whoever, and it's just like stupid sim lineups. You're throwing out there like, okay, what if Ryan Rollins is trying to throw oops to Giannis? How far can I take this team if I do that? So yeah, it's kind of a Mickey Mouse land, and also nobody has fun. Doesn't seem to. I remember it seemed to be so joyous. And you know what? Honestly, I got to raise my hand. It was my fault. So a couple of weeks ago, what was like the last really good win this team had post trade deadline? Maybe it was, you know what it was? It's when we were dropping. No, it wasn't that one. It was when we were dropping the Wizards, I think. So of course,
I was going to say the Kings one was solid. I enjoyed the Kings one.
I want to say it was a home game, but there was a game where like we were really beating the brakes off. The
Clippers?
Maybe it was the Clippers game. We were beating the brakes off as whoever. And
the Clippers one was like that was a gutty win. That was like a grinding win. beating the brakes, that was probably the Mavericks.
Maybe it was the Mavs. It probably was the Mavs. It was when Giannis was towel whipping the ref. And I said, uh-oh, the Bucks might have just found their mojo. And I think I posted about that on Blue Sky. And then the team immediately went into the trash can. So I think it was that Mavs win. So honestly, we're talking a lot on this podcast about accountability, whose fault it is, whose head needs to roll, who needs to lose their job. I got to raise my hand. That's on me, folks, for being like, uh-oh, watch out. The Bucks might have found their own mojo. They did not. I just remember guys looking happy on the bench. I was like, I don't think I've really seen that at all this season. And they did. And that's when they were at the peak of their post-deadline powers. And then Kyle Kuzma came back to earth. And it was like, okay, well, he never even really got that far off earth. He's been pretty consistently bad offensively since getting here. So my bad. I want to say that before we get to the miscellaneous.
Break everything if you need to. That's all I got. All right. Let's go to rapid fire.
Beautiful.
Riley, you got it.
Okay. First question. This isn't a super serious one, but I'm like a dog with a bone with this. I can't let it go. And this will be a little bit of a preview into our Golden Hooves Award, which is going to be happening, I think, in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to that second edition of that. This question: do you think Doc takes unmarked pills from strangers in the hopes that he happens upon the limitless pill?
Yes.
Okay, good. Right. Next question. Simple one. And this is more of a question for Adam because I know Kyle's answer. Formula One or NASCAR?
Push.
As being in this is NASCAR a thing in South Carolina, or are you not South enough for that to really matter?
No, it's a thing. I don't know anyone who watches it, and I haven't. So it would be a thing if I were. I guess I would pick NASCAR. I guess because I could probably walk down the street and find someone watching it.
I also wondered, given your because your in-laws are Australian, right?
Yes.
So I wondered if maybe they had, because
they're big F1 fans.
Right.
Like they've been F1 fans for a long time, but they canceled their YouTube TV subscription.
Tragic.
They used to use to watch F1. So yeah, I'm kind of protesting F1 now.
Kyle, was there ever a part of you that would have gotten into NASCAR, you think?
I think when I was younger, with like Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jimmy Johnson, Tony, like when they were around, I would like watch occasionally, like on the Sundays when there wasn't football. So there was a stretch where I was like, yeah, okay, I'll put it on. Like I knew who people were. While now it's like, I don't know who's good. I probably can name 2-3 drivers at most. I don't know what's going on. I probably know more IndyCar drivers than NASCAR. I don't even watch IndyCar, so.
I will say, as somebody from Wisconsin, going to, it could be like family friend, even like almost like a distant relative or something, somebody's place on a Sunday and they're watching NASCAR. I don't know if I've had as much of a stepping into another world experience than getting into a room where there's somebody genuinely watching and like invested in NASCAR. It's just to me, a very strange experience.
Yeah.
And so I could understand Formula One is a little different from that. I mean, I've never watched, so I can't say one way or the other, but it's always felt like a different world to me. So, okay. Next question. NBA road game you'd like to make. So there's 29 other teams in the league. I obviously make the Timberwolves road game every year if I can. Is there another team you'd like to see the Bucks face in person on the road if you could make it?
I feel like I need to go see a game at Madison Square Garden. So the Knicks.
Yeah, that was almost going to be my answer too. Maybe United Center. It could be fun to just see them beat the Bulls there. I feel like that would be kind of enjoyable to watch the Bulls just crap the bed.
My pick, it's tough because I don't really like confronting other fans. I don't want to fight other fans, but I do like annoying them. And so the team that we have the biggest beef with right now, quite obviously, is the Pacers. And God knows I don't want to burn a whole ass trip on going to fucking Indianapolis, Indiana. You know, I mean, come on. I don't want to spend the money. I don't want to spend the time. I'm sure they have a nice Marriott, but I don't, but I don't think we have a lot of Indiana listeners. So if we do, sorry about that.
Wilson,
but just,
sorry.
just for like in the hopes that the team performs and you get some good ribbon back and forth with the other fans, I'm going to choose the Pacers, although I'm sure I will immediately regret that because the team will not perform and I will look a complete asshole in front of all these people, but such is my lot in life. So, but the Garden would be, I think, the objective choice just because, of course, it is the Mecca in basketball. And I love games are always great. Maybe we'll get 2, maybe 3 or 4 in the first round of these playoffs. We'll see. Okay. Final question. Which of these 3 sliding door moments was most consequential in the Bucks title window closing? Not that it's closed all the way, but in it going from open to a little bit more closed, a little bit more closed, a little bit more closed. 3 options. 1, replacing PJ Tucker with Shemi Ojale. 2, trading 5 second-round picks for Jay Crowder. 3, Terry Stotts leaving before the season even began, so he didn't have a former head coach who could step in, who had experience with Dame as his point guard for years and years and years, to be the interim head coach once Adrian Griffin got fired. Which of those 3 do you think had the biggest impact on its season in, like, reducing the Bucks' chances of winning a title that year?
Honestly, Shemi Ojale.
He was so bad.
Because if that doesn't happen, you don't get him out, you don't get Rodney Hood out with Dante to get Serge Ibaka. You could have maybe taken Dante and gotten something better, which would then give Milwaukee more options and more assets down the road. So I legit think Shemi Ojale.
Yeah,
because Jay Crowder was bad, but you know what? We were already too far gone at that point.
I think you're right, Kyle. And maybe, I don't know, maybe they think PJ Tucker's big enough that we can work, because that's the season Brooke got hurt, right? So maybe he's big enough that we don't need to get another big, so we can keep Dante or at minimum not trade him for Serge, like you said, Kyle. So I'd say that. Jay probably second, because that's 5 second-round picks for nothing. And I feel like the cost for players went down a little bit the year after. That trade deadline was just crazy. So that was a lot of assets out the door.
I think they're all consequential. Obviously, the Terry Stotts is a what if. I mean, you just wonder if. I mean, the offense wasn't really the problem. It's not like Dame and Giannis were connected, but the offense was not the problem under Adrian Griffin. It was the defense, and I don't think Terry Stotts is an elite defensive mind. So that's TBD. Maybe him keeping us from having to hire Doc, maybe that's the sliding door moment. Man, it is the PJ one because it's just so hilarious how bad Shemi Ojale was and also how bad Rodney Hood was. However, I will always remember the Rodney Hood game. And this is still the same office. The table was over there. The desk, I remember it like it was yesterday. The table was over there. We've just watched them take the Knicks down 11 a.m. on a Sunday or whatever the hell. And we had this Rodney Hood game. The final thing on Jay Crowder, very funny that there were about 2 games at the start was like, okay. And then about game 3, I said, okay, I don't think this is going to work. and it kept going. And we brought him back and it kept going and it just kept going. So shout out to
bringing him back was also the second problem.
I forgot. I should have said trading 5 second rounders and then bringing him back. Now I was on a minimum, so whatever.
I'm still sticking with Shemi Ojale because if Horse hits on that, we might have a whole different core. I'm going with that. Yeah.
Okay,
Kyle,
wait, Rodney Hood. I'm just looking at do you know how many points he had in that next game?
God, it was not a lot. I can't imagine.
I feel like it was 12 or something, but he had it in like a 2-minute span.
I'm gonna price this right, Kyle, and say he made one more 3, so he had 15 points.
He had 14 points and 3 assists. And his Basketball Reference photo is him in a Bucks jersey. So always have that.
Sorry, I shouldn't clap into the microphone. Was that his point total high for that season, Adam? I don't mean to make you
Hold on.
have to assume. So I would be amazed if there was an even better Rodney Hood game that I can't remember right now.
Nope, that was his high.
Man, shout out to those guys. That was back when we were young and stupid, and even though we clearly just blew it, especially like Game 6 against the Celtics, we just blew it. We could still believe that, hey, you know what? We'll be back next season. We would not be back next season. We would not. I forgot about the Brook Lopez injury too. Add that to the list of just like freak things. He played one game and then they said, hey, by the way, he's going to get surgery and he's done for the year.
And that's when I was like, maybe we should get a backup big and a Brooks successor, because how are we going to rely on a dude with a bad back? And Brooks, surprisingly, thankfully, has played really well since then.
Yep. Shout out to you, Brooke. All right. That's all I got for rapid fire.
All right. I have a film review, finally. It feels like it's been a while. Tombstone. So I was in Waukesha hanging out with my parents, and my dad loves putting on Grit TV. So basically, I'm just watching Westerns. I'm not a Western person. I'm just going to start with that right now. But Tombstone came on. It came out in like, I feel like it came out like late 80s, early 90s. It had Kurt Russell. It had Val Kilmer. It had a bunch of other dudes. Honestly, I feel like if that movie was like 30 minutes shorter, maybe even 40 minutes shorter, I would have really loved it. But it just kept going on and on and on. And at one point, I was like, who are these people? Like, we're still on this. Is this a TV series? And I just like miss all the commercials. And it went on forever. It was a fun Western. You know, it had every element you would want in a Western movie. You got dudes acting like cowboys. You got people shooting up the place. You got good acting. Actually, the acting was pretty good. But my God, that movie just dragged on. I don't know how long it was, but I think it was at least 3 hours. And I'm sorry. No movie should be that long. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you much about the movie in terms of like story from start to finish. All I remember was there was action, and the action was good, and the acting was good. I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10. And honestly, I'm heavily docking it because it's just way too effing long.
I'm looking here. So 93 was the year that it was released.
Okay,
It looks very, just even the theatrical release poster looks very 93. So I'm sure that vibe was the same throughout the movie. Budget of $25 million. It made about $75 million. It's the 16th highest grossing Western movie since 1979. So apparently it had quite the pull, but yeah, I don't really care about Westerns either. That's very funny. I mean, that's some deep Kyle's dad lore that he has Grit TV on. That was probably the diamond in the rough.
I don't know when this whole thing started, but yes, this man will have Grit TV on. If he could, he would have that on from start to finish of the day.
Okay.
Don't know why, but so we were hanging out in the family room. I don't know what the boys were doing. I don't know what my mom and my brother were doing, but my dad and I were just on the couch watching this Western. And it was almost 3.5 hours.
And does he like? But he like sits and watches the movies.
Yeah, he
okay, all right, okay. I wasn't sure if he just like the like sound design of Western movies or something that just in the background. Okay, wow.
I don't know.
Okay, I mean, I'll look it up, and it seems somewhat interesting. It does seem long though, from what I just read. So, okay, 6 out of 10.
And again, it would have been so much higher if it was just like 40 to 50 minutes shorter.
Mm-hmm. It's like most films. I see a movie, and it's of course the complete like layman jackass reviewer to be like, they could have trimmed it a little bit.
It's like, no, this thing was this thing was at least 3 hours. No, absolutely not.
Yes, yeah, that's a bit excessive. I agree.
Maybe I'm exaggerating time, but it felt like, I think with the commercials, it just felt like 3 hours. Like, what are we doing here?
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Kyle.
Yeah. All right. We're going to end it with a weekly prediction. So this week, it's a very busy week. So today or Tuesday, if you're hearing this, they play the Phoenix Suns at home. No Kevin Durant. So optimism. Then they go on the road, face the Sixers in Philly on Thursday. Then Saturday, they are going to play at Miami. And then on Sunday, they will face the New Orleans Pelicans. This is the game that was made up after the winter storm that happened in New Orleans that Milwaukee could not play. So this is the makeup game for that. So, Adam, I'll start with you. What is your prediction for this week?
4-0. These teams suck.
Oof.
These teams suck. Bucks have Giannis. They should win.
I'm gonna go 3-1, but we'll lose to the Suns again. And Mike Budenholzer will do like a Kyrie style where he'll stomp on the Buck head in the middle of the court. after Grayson Allen leads the company, just puts the Bucks to the sword. So no, 3-1, but I don't know. I guess the Suns suck so bad. I don't know. It's hard, but we lost to them. I'll say 3-1. Just say the Suns. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
I'm saying 2-2 just because I feel like one of those games, whether it's Miami or New Orleans, they are going to just punt on. So I can see them resting play. I can see like Giannis getting a rest day on one of probably the New Orleans one. And Giannis is. So I'll say 2-2. And also, I feel like Mike Budenholzer revenge game. Do you think they're going to do a tribute video for Budenholzer? Because this is the first time he's in Milwaukee since getting fired.
I say yes.
Yeah,
he literally won the first title in like 50 years. I mean, come on.
I think they should. It seems pretty weird though.
They absolutely should.
Where he didn't talk to the press, right? He didn't talk to the Milwaukee people. Couldn't ask him questions, so I don't know. But they should do one out of respect to him.
Yeah, I would agree. They should do it. So, all right. Well, that was a very optimistic filled episode. Make sure to check us out at brewhoop.com where we will have game previews, recaps. You can always chat with us on the game threads. You can join us on the playback where if you want to see potential crash outs live, that is a place to go. Otherwise, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with all your friends. Also, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, and we will talk to you later.